going on to the next topic, though, we kind of already briefly touched on it. The protests happening in Los Angeles, happening in several different cities around the country because of the ICE raids that are happening in Los Angeles, in several different cities around the country. You kind of already went into, I think, it a little bit here, James, but I kind of want to just get like your personal opinion about it. Like, are you in favor of ICE going around the country, raiding all these different workplaces, taking people out, arresting them, I guess like deporting them? Like, where do you fall on all this?
Yeah, I where I fall on it is I'm not going to be I'm not a fan of ICE because I think they do a lot of things that is quite concerning from like a dictatorship type of. It seems like it's kind of Gestapo style. There's no
Yeah,
rules. They're not clearly marked of who they are. You don't even know who really is an ICE agent, who's not. I mean, I've heard a lot of reports of people impersonating ICE to
yeah,
rob places, and so that kind of thing bothers me. So I'm not going to be out there defending ICE. And if I ever do defend ICE, I'm being paid to do that. So just keep that in mind. If I'm ever shilling for the establishment, you will know that I'm declaring it right now on on your show today that I would have gotten
yeah.
paid for it, and you would know that that opinion is not genuine. So that's my feeling on that. In terms of like the deportation itself, I'm kind of struggling with that a little bit because on one hand, you could say, well, these people have been here for a very long time. They aren't committing any crimes, or a lot of them aren't committing any crime. Maybe some of them are, but most of
Yeah,
them aren't. And so why are we going in and raiding Home Depots and all, restaurants and things like that? It
right.
seems kind of inhumane to do. But then on the other side, I'm like, well, did these people cross the border illegally? If they did, they seem to have broken a law in the United States. So we do have the right to remove them from the country if we want to, if the government wants to do that. And it seems like, okay, Trump won the election. He was very overt about his plan to mass deport. There's actually, before this was going on, there was actually quite a large number of people who were disappointed that Trump wasn't deporting enough people because people kept throwing in numbers like, hey, look at how many more people Biden deported by this point in his term. And Trump was
Yeah.
lagging very far behind those numbers. So that a lot of people were getting pissed. Um, so my thought process is like, I generally, I don't know if I'm going to be out there. I don't want to go out there and advocate for illegal immigration. I'm not an open borders guy. I still believe in just countries and there should be borders. So you can't just cross them however
Yeah,
you want to
that
cross
was a
them.
Ronald Reagan position. That's not a 2025 position.
What do you mean? The open
Ronald,
border?
yeah, no, there's a great clip from the 1980s Republican primary debate where H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan were both talking about advocating on behalf of open borders. I
Oh,
recommend checking
really?
it out. Yeah.
Okay. And that there might be some economic reasons for them to do that, right? Because that
Yeah.
coming in, illegal immigrants coming in would necessarily depress the wages, which would be good for corporations. And I've talked a little bit about it and saying, hey, there seems to be some overlap between, some billionaires or corporations sponsoring some protests, or at least being supportive of these protests. And I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
well, maybe they're not doing it for the right reasons. Maybe they're just using this issue to say, hey, this is going to be good because they're going to drive down wages and this could be good for us. And it's kind of where my mind goes. So overall in the protests, I understand where the protests are coming from. And also I do think I think some of this is probably staged optics. I don't even know how legitimate it is because you never really know online now with the Mexican flags. Like, who are the people bringing out the Mexican flags? I don't think that's a great look. And a lot of people have said that by now, right? You can't be protesting, in Los Angeles, and waving foreign flags because you
Can,
could just go
can
2 hours south.
can we
And I think
can
you
we
would push back.
though? Can we though? I mean,
You can do
I'm
that,
sorry.
but it's
I'm
not going to
sorry.
bring people to your side.
I
It's not going to be
apologize.
effective.
Yeah, no, please
No,
continue.
no,
I didn't
okay,
mean to
no. I
cut
want
you
to
off.
hear. No, no, I want to hear the pushback.
I mean, wasn't weren't the Mexican people there first? I mean, truthfully speaking, and how much of a population there? Are people like in that area? Are you of Mexican Mexican descent? Are Mexicans still themselves? I mean, it feels weird for people to be pushing back, like, oh, we don't want to see these foreign flags flying around the streets. We have foreign flags flying around our capital. No one
We do,
seems
and
to,
and that I don't
like,
agree with either.
it's a weird thing, but like, I go to, bars here in this town where people have like foreign flags waving around here, whether it's an Irish bar or an Italian bar or something like that. I mean, like it feels almost like when you talk about things that are astroturfed, things that are kind of manufactured, that feels almost like a manufactured kind of like outrage thing. Like, oh, look at them
Well,
waving the Mexican flag. Who cares
I think
about people
that's
waving the Mexican? Like, it almost makes more sense. People were complaining about property damage because it's like, oh yeah, there's someone's business being destroyed. There's someone's, like their home being defaced. Like
yeah.
that makes more sense than people complaining about that. But someone was waving a Mexican. Oh, come on now. Like
Well,
who really cares about someone waving a Mexican flag? I mean, it would make more sense if maybe they were waving like an ISIS flag or like a Hezbollah flag or a Hamas flag, but a Mexican flag. Like, come on now. Like that feels like a stretch for that to be the thing you're outraged about.
well, I would say that I think there's a big difference between, going to a protest and having that dramatic image on top of a burning car with a Mexican flag versus like an Irish bar that's celebrating Irish heritage in
Yeah,
America. I think that's different. And also it's like the point of a protest has to be to drum up support for your position, right? You're trying to bring awareness to your cause to say, hey, this is a problem here. People are being mistreated or unfairly treated, and
yeah.
we need to just come together in solidarity. And I'm just reacting as a regular person, which, I kind of am. I'm just reacting. My gut feeling when I see that is like, well, that's not going to work because you're in America and you're waving a foreign flag to you, and you could say, oh, well, Mexico used to have this land. Okay, but that's not the case. So is that what you're advocating for? You're saying California should become part of Mexico? Is that what you're saying?
I
Is
think
that is
it's
that the art? Is
people who are or like it's the same probably like argument that people who still wave the Confederate flag would make. People who are proud of their heritage,
and I think those
who see
people would probably.
themselves as both Mexicans and Americans.
I think those people possibly waving the Confederate flag would say that they would advocate for secession still. They say they would say, "Hey, we would be better off if we're our own thing." I think that's some of those people, and I don't know. So, are the people waving the Mexican flag literally saying we should be part of Mexico?
I mean, I would think because as somebody who has been to protests, who has tried to help organize protests, I think a lot of times you have folks who are trying to organize a protest, and then usually when you go about doing that, the next chain of ideas that kind of form from that are people who are just trying to find ways to get other people to come to them. And so when you are trying to get like the 98% of people to just show up who have nothing to do with the organization of the protest, they just come there with their own agenda. You never know why they're there or what they're going to do once they get there. You just ask them to come. And so maybe they decided like, hey, I'm tired of all the demonization of my people, so I'm going to bring my flag here and show that I'm proud of my Mexican heritage. And I think it sometimes is just as benign as that. And I think that there is the job of people who are in the media, especially if you're in the oppositional media, if you're in the right wing media, and you want to try to find a way to spin this into a negative so that it's not damaging your dear leader as much as you want it to. You try to find some nefarious reason why that flag is there. But I think it could be just as simple as someone just thinking that, hey, I'm just here trying to show that I don't think that it's okay to be demonizing people from this country. I'm from this country. My family's from this country. I brought this flag with me. Maybe it just was that simple for some of these people. I don't know because I'm not there. I haven't had a chance to talk to them. Who really knows why they brought the flags there? But I think that sometimes I see this almost like urge to drive into conspiracy lane too much when it comes
Well,
to breaking down
yeah,
protests. You know what I mean?
absolutely. There's a lot. I mean, with the bricks, there's like is Soros bringing bricks in
Right.
and
You
this
brought
and
that up in
that.
one of your videos. Yeah.
Right, and I said I don't think Soros is bringing in
Is
these
sending
bricks.
bricks.
Right. And I don't think necessarily there's like a nefarious nature to people. I think people are probably genuinely proud of their Mexican heritage and they want to wave that flag. I just think that um, it's it's the difference between do you want things to change or are you just out there to just cause just kind of like vent a little bit and then move on with your life to say I'm going to go out today, burn some cars, wave the Mexican flag, and now I'm just over this? Or are you there to like genuinely bring about systemic change, right? For example, if we relate it to the pro-Palestine movement and those kinds of protests, right? I think it would be probably not a great idea for those folks to be then using the Hamas flag. I think that would be a bad move. It doesn't mean they can't do that. It
Yeah.
just means that it won't work as well. And so that's kind of what I'm saying here. And that's how I genuinely or generally break things down in my commentary sometimes is just to say, is this gonna work for you or not gonna work for you? And why are you there? Are you just there to do stuff and then move on or not? And I think, of course, from the oppositional media, you're definitely gonna find reasons to drum up whatever you need on your base to say, look at all these, we have a foreign invasion happening here in California, right? That's kind of what they were saying.
Yeah.
I believe that there's a foreign invasion. I don't think there's a foreign invasion, but optically speaking, it's also not so good for the cause.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the last things I'll say about like the optics of these protests here is like I think when you go out and talk to people who are at a protest, it seems to me like everyone has a different reason for being there. And most people who come to there, it's just an event. It's something to do. Like we are all online on a day in and day out basis.
Yeah.
You and depending on how your social media algorithm is tailored, because we all kind of are in our own unique bubbles of, our creating thanks to our tech overlords. Like you are getting a particular set of news points from the particular set of news points that you probably are interacting with the most. And so you are either probably very okay with mass deportations and ICE on some level, or you're probably very not okay with mass deportations and ICE on some level. And so if you are in the not okay camp, and you see other people going to a protest who if you heard about it, it's an event, you show up there, yell it a little bit, and then you go home. I think most people do use it as a way to vent. I do think that there is more of those people showing up there, probably dramatically more of those people showing up there than people who come there with a specific agenda. I think those people, the people who are chronically online, like myself, maybe you fall into this category too, who actually do speak online with a sense of an agenda. I know that I try to have an agenda, so to speak. It's usually to help people realize that things are fucked up and that we need to change them. I do think that there's a lot less of us than there are of everyone else who are just kind of out there just to yell and make sure that people understand that they're not happy with what's going on in the country. I do kind of like want to round back to the ice raids just for a quick second here before we kind of kill this conversation completely. I think one of the problems that I think have with the framing of this was happening underneath Obama, this was happening underneath Biden. People are just talking about this now because Trump's doing it. I personally push back against that because while I do think that would be true for maybe like we were talking about earlier, like the Positive America people, or like maybe like MSNBC or maybe CNN. I think there are a lot of us more in the independent sphere in the left who, no matter who it is, you are going to protest this because, as you were saying earlier, we shouldn't have ICE, out there without warrants, with their face covered, not like ever saying who they are, plain clothes, just like gripping people off the street, going to immigration hearings where people are doing what we are legally asking them to do, showing up to their day in court to plead their case to be in the country, and then being abducted from there. Like, I don't think that ICE should exist anymore. I just feel like the way that they operate just does not make any sense to me. This extrajudicial way. I mean, it would be a different story if they were operating in completely legal ways where they were showing up, giving people due process, like not really kind of like ever like not saying who they were. It'd be a different story if they were kind of like following normal channels that we all assumed from law enforcement, but we're not seeing that. What we're seeing is honestly, it feels like to me, is almost like a pretext for like what the next stage of law enforcement could be overall. And that scares the hell out of me. I just don't think that any police force should be operating the way that ICE is. And so I don't think that that organization needs to continue to exist. But yeah, if this was being done under Biden and we weren't talking about it enough, I think that that is a failure, on the media as a whole. But like, I know that if I had been seeing the videos then the way that I'm seeing them now, it would have been no different because every time that I did see something that Biden was doing that I didn't like, I was calling it out last time over. And I think that we need more of that on the left in general. There has to be a consistency in values no matter who is in office. Do I like Donald Trump? Absolutely not. But I got to tell you, if Joe Biden was in office or if Kamala Harris was in office right now and the exact same set of circumstances were playing out, I would be giving you the exact same set of commentary. And I hope that we have more people doing that as time goes on, because that is the most important thing as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I would have to say that I'm glad you're one of these people. It just doesn't pay as well to do that, what you're just describing?
It doesn't pay well right now anyway. So I
No,
mean, like,
I think if you're one of these other folks, I'm going to name some names, some Aaron Parnas type of people. I think you're going to
yeah,
make a lot more money if you just do the party talking points, right?
yeah,
If you're out there trying to be principled and saying, I'm going to critique my side when it's necessary, I don't think
yeah.
that's well appreciated by your side, at least the
No,
leadership of your side. Probably the people, some people might appreciate it, but also I generally think that people don't like being whiplashed like that either, because that's kind of the space I'm in. Is that I truly do feel like I fall on both sides because I'm kind of issue dependent and I kind of think through it myself. So I do get a lot of feedback from my viewers or people in the comment section saying, "Man, this is like whiplash. Like you're going, you're talking at one point, you're talking about anti-Israel stuff, pro-Palestine stuff, and then you're going anti-vax, and then you're doing, all, it just doesn't
yeah.
align. And a lot of people feel like, what the hell is going on? But I'm like,
That's just who you are.
that's just what I believe. And I'm backing it
Yeah,
up with some supporting evidence to say, hey, this is why I think, we should be thinking more critically about X, Y, and Z issue. And I do try to bring some receipts to the table versus just saying, hey, this is how I feel. It's like, oh, I feel this because I've seen some data or some evidence or some historical occurrence that might be relevant to today in terms of the context. Um, but to your point about the ICE and whether they should exist or not exist,
yeah.
I'm not convinced that they should or shouldn't exist, but I think they're obviously there. There's a purpose for them, right? It's like it's customs, immigration and customs enforcement or whatever, whatever it stands for. But their job is to round people up who are crossing the border illegally, right? I mean, there's
Right. Can we
you could
pause that for a second though? Because
yeah
I think this is actually a particularly important point that kind of gets lost sometimes. Most of the people who do enter this country are coming through a point of entry,
yeah
and they are claiming asylum. And so coming through illegally, I think, is a little bit of a misnomer, because you're saying that I think the narrative that's perpetuated too often is that everyone's not coming in through these port of entries. They're just coming in some random spot, across the Rio Grande, and that they're just like flooding into the country that way. But most people
Well,
are coming
that's
in.
what the reports are saying, right? In the Biden years, that was the reporting that people were coming in through
Right,
these.
but the customs agents will
Uh,
tell you that most people are actually coming through these ports of entries, and what's ends up happening is that we don't actually have the immigration judges on the border
mm,
to actually go through and process all these people. So what they end up doing is essentially it's almost like a catch and release deal. People are coming in. We don't have the ability to see you right now. Come back in 6 weeks for your court date, or come back in 6 months for your court date, and then people don't show up for their court dates.
okay.
And that, it seems to be, was actually playing out here. There's actually a backlog right now of over, I think it's like over 2.5 million cases that are still waiting to be heard by immigration judges. And so, truthfully speaking, the real problem is, in my opinion, I'm sorry to cut you off here, but my opinion is that you have asylum laws that you have a problem with, and these laws are on the books. People are coming here, they are claiming asylum. That is legally what they're allowed to do. And then we don't have the infrastructure to actually process these asylum claims. The the obvious fix to me, is to either do one of two things: either change your asylum laws, or add more immigration judges at the border so you can more quickly process these people and either turn them away, or say that you are allowed to be here just more quickly than what we are doing right now, which is letting people stay here for years before they ever even get their case heard, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Right. Well, you're talking about actual solutions, okay? But most people are trying to talk about what the framing of the issue is,
Yeah,
which is where it gets lost, right? Because
yeah,
now the Trump administration, I would argue, is not really trying to necessarily solve the issue in the most humane or most efficient or coherent way possible. They're just saying, hey, we're going to put a big show on, and we're going to go in and show my base that I'm the guy who they think I
the
am.
mass deportation guy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So that's why they're doing it. It's a made for television spectacle. And that's why probably you didn't see those images in the past, because that's not all presidents. They don't all want to do this kind of thing, but he does. And so he's
yeah,
making a big show out of it. Um, and yeah, you could argue that there's better ways to, even if you wanted to do the mass deportation, there are better and more humane ways to do it. That's not exactly what is going on. And you could argue that that's not just an immigration issue. It's all over the United States and all kinds of different issues. There's a very
yeah.
clear and easy solution, not necessarily easy, but there's a clear solution that should be implemented that's going to probably increase the chances of the best possible outcome. But they don't do that because it probably goes against, some other interests that they have. And me being in California, a number of, issues arise when I think about this, like the homeless crisis. There are actual ways to fix this, but it doesn't seem to be happening because there are a lot of other interests, let's say real estate developers trying to lobby the government to say, well, we can help solve some of this homelessness stuff, so give us some money. And they're
Right.
not really interested in solving it. They're just interested in some grants for their new development. And they could just call it low income, a few units. Okay, we helped. And so you have all these other competing interests that you know take over basically. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of, I think what you're doing is like a discipline. Okay, I'm going to solve this problem best way possible. What is actually happening going on is like shaping the narrative. And I think that's what both parties really only try to do. They're just trying to shape narratives. And I think at this point, the Republicans do a better job of shaping the narrative, right? Because because there's the crime issue, right? There, the people talk about how migrants or undocumented people actually commit crimes at um,
Yeah.
less crime
Less of a rate than naturalized
than
human,
the naturalized
naturalized American
citizens.
citizens. Yeah.
Yeah. And the pushback for that obviously would, and then those facts I believe to be true. But the pushback for that is, why are there even any illegal immigrants here at all? And that's a hard thing to even, that's just a hard narrative to win, because now you have to justify why illegal people are here.
I mean, I think if people actually just knew more of the infrastructure that's in place, it wouldn't have to be a hard narrative to combat. You can just say that there is a lack of immigration judges, and we do have these asylum laws on the books. Change one of those two things, or change both of them. It could be that simple. You could say, "Hey, we're suspending asylum laws," or you could say, "Hey, we are going to do a mass hiring of immigration judges, and we are going to flood these border towns and all these ports of entries with them,
Yeah.
and so we're going to make it seem as though like people can have their case heard within a week, and they're either going to be sent back to their home country or they're going to be let in, and that's going to be the end of it. And then you wouldn't have to deal with this anymore. Like it could be that simple of an investment on the border."
That's true. And
And
then if things improve, right? I think that was the big issue when the Democrats were in power, is that things seem to be degrading in these areas like San Diego, Los Angeles. Like there's
mhm,
surges of crime and homelessness and all kinds of different things. And now, correct or not, immigrants are being scapegoated, right? Possibly
right,
being scapegoated for those issues.
there
And
always has to be a scapegoat that can be
they're always
had.
at, but then there didn't need to be a scapegoat if the Democrats actually just ran these cities better. Okay.
That's a
And
whole separate
that's
conversation.
a
But
whole separate conversation, but that's where the
yeah,
Republicans come in and say, hey, you're not running the city well. And it's because you're doing this, X, Y, and you're letting all these immigrants in. And that's why the city has gone to shit. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't think it actually probably is. I think the immigrants are a legitimate scapegoat. But then I'm not going to personally go out there and defend something that I find to be, unlawful in nature, from my personal perspective. And so I think for the Democrats, you just got to do a better job when you're in office. You have to actually do the things better. You know what I mean? You have to actually just govern better, because I actually don't think that Democrats are very good at governing. And this is me growing up and still living in a
blue
Democrat
state.
supermajority state in
Yeah.
California. They're not very good at governing things. It's a chaos all the time. And so me living in these conditions, I don't like that. So then if somebody else is saying, well, I can fix this chaos for you, let me just do these things, then I'm less, even though I oppose some of the things from let's say a moral perspective, I'd say, well, if my life is going to maybe get better, let's try it. Let's deport some people. Let's see what happens after that.
I mean, I feel like
And I'm
the
speaking
the
very
the
candidly with you, and this is probably
right.
not going to be too, ideal, popular for me to, some people might be very offended just me hearing,
Well,
just saying things like that.
I would say that from the conversation that you just had, I know we still have one more thing we're gonna like try to break into with
Yeah.
Palantir here. There are so many different angles to I think what you were just talking about, whether it's talking about the current organization and the current like I guess implementation of laws in blue states versus red states, cities that are run by Democrats, cities that are not run by Democrats, the impacts of how people are willing to vote for Trump or whether they're willing to vote for Republicans in general when they see how things are being done when Democrats are the ones governing. There's a lot of different branches to take there, and I think that maybe it's a great opportunity for you to come back on the future for us to kind of go deeper into all of those. Because I do think there's, as we've had in these previous conversations, there's some different points that I would probably love to make here, points of contention.
I think it's fitting to leave one final thought, an observation about a country which I love. It was stated best in a letter I received not long ago. A man wrote me and said, "You can go to live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go to live in Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German, a Turk, or Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American." Thanks to each wave of new arrivals to this land of opportunity, we're a nation forever young, forever bursting with energy and new ideas, and always on the cutting edge, always leading the world to the next frontier. This quality is vital to our future as a nation. If we ever closed the door to new Americans, our leadership in the world would soon be lost.